gritty.
Good Sunday afternoon, Razorback Nation. Welcome into this Sunday's afternoon of Razor Recap, brought to you by Hogs on the Hill, your go-to podcast for an in-depth dive onto all things Arkansas sports. We're brought to you by our friends over at Razor Pigs. Looking good, never felt so fun. Razor Pigs is the Arkansas-born brand, bringing some serious style to the golf course, tailgate, and everywhere in between. From high-quality polos to head-turning hats, they've got what you need to rep the natural state with pride. Found right here at home and now run by a Razorback loving family. Razor Pigs is where comfort meets cool. So go hog wild and shop Razor Pigs today at razorpigs.us, and our friends over at Scarlet Letter, Arkansas's very own handcrafted spiked seltzer. You can check them out today. And if you are in Northwest Arkansas, check out the Core Brewery Tap Room, where you can get Scarlet Letter in all of its various flavors. Man, what a nice Sunday afternoon. Arkansas has a big nice series in Alabama this weekend where they came away with the series win, but also a series sweep. So talk about getting back on track with a big weekend there. We'll give you some latest updates on the Arkansas basketball and the transfer portal and how that's going. Not a ton to just report right there. As we talked about it, they kind of keep that very much low key. And we'll have some Arkansas football updates as well as Arkansas softball. But nice Sunday afternoon, coming off a nice sweep in baseball. So how are we doing, Zane?
Man, it was, gotta be honest, was not expecting a sweep. What was it, 18-game home win streak for Alabama, longest in the country. So
Yep.
It was nice to not only put an end to that streak, but also sweep them in the process. And, hopefully this is that turning point where you see some of Van Horn's teams in the past, it seems like it's actually, more often than people remember that, he does have a little bit of a skid normally. And hey, you come back firing. And when this team's clicking, they got some guys who can play. And, I think we saw that this week. And they got some guys who, if we're clicking, we're going to be tough to beat. The question is, can they keep it rolling? And that's a tough question. I don't know if you want to dive right into baseball fully right now, but
Yeah, we'll go ahead and dive in. I mean, that was the big thing. It's like Transplanted Texans comment. Was anybody really expecting a sweep? And I don't think so. I think the expectation was, can we just at least win the series, maybe a game? But to your point, I mean, you saw Dave finally do some tweaks with the lineup and the pitching staff, most notably this weekend with, Deeds getting the Friday night start, Gibbler getting the Saturday start, and then today, Tate McGuire, which was, a little bit of a curveball for me because, you saw him start midweek. So I was thinking, surely he won't start midweek and then start in the weekend as well.
Well, I got to wonder if they started McGuire with the plan to go limited innings.
Mm-hmm.
You got to wonder if they initially thought, hey, he's only going to give us a couple innings because he did pitch the midweek, but he looked very good pitching the midweek. Maybe see if that confidence can go and at least allow us to come out the gate and maybe build a lead. But yeah, I don't think they were really expecting him to go a full 5 to 7 innings with him also starting the midweek. That was one where, hey, his last outing was good. He did good as a starter in the midweek. Let's see if him as a starter can at least keep us on the right foot and let maybe see some bats wake up and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think that was the thing, going into this weekend, I almost expected when I saw a TBA for Sunday for it to almost be a committee type approach. Like maybe you have a guy, see how long he can go, and then, you use your bullpen to kind of get you the rest of the way. And that, sure enough, that's what Arkansas did. But you look at Friday night, Arkansas wins the game 7-5. And, this entire series, it seemed like it was always late inning theatrics or heroics, if you will, that did it for Arkansas. Like, usually Alabama would score early in the game, and then it'd be just back and forth until like that 7th, 8th inning when things would really get going for Arkansas. But in this first one, like we mentioned before, Deets getting the start here and came out and performed really well in the Friday night role for him. 6 innings for him, 3 hits allowed, 2 runs, both those earned, 3 walks, 9 strikeouts. Faced 25 batters, pitched 107 pitches, which was a new career high for him. And then you got Gackle come in relief behind him, got credited for the win, but win an inning, allowed 1 hit, 1 run, that run being earned, 2 walks, 1 strikeout on 16 or 28 pitches. Then McIlvaine came in for an inning, 3 hits allowed, 2 runs, both those earned, 1 strikeout for him on 30 pitches. And then Parker Coyle came down and shut things out in the final 9th inning with 1 strikeout on 7 pitches. So, overall pitching staff for Arkansas did really well on Friday night. I mean, yeah, you hate to see, you don't want to see necessarily 5 earned runs, but with what our bats were able to do, I think, you'll take that, especially with the type of start you got from Dietz, and then, kind of following that up with a committee bullpen approach there.
Yeah, and the things you don't like to see are you brought in Gackle and McIlvaine out of the bullpen. They each pitched 1 inning, yet their pitch counts were 20 and 30. So, they were throwing a lot of pitches in that 1 inning. That's something, you don't really love to see that. Also with Dietz, the one thing that has kind of been a struggle for him this season, just the wild pitches. I know that was his 7th of the season, the one he had that game. So, he's doing great as a starter. He's great right now. That is one little thing maybe you want to see if maybe we can cut back on that, because if it comes down to a 2 to 3 game or something, a wild pitch giving up free base runner, a free base, that can come back to bite you in the end. So
right,
little things like that, and him having 7 now on the season is, and I feel, an alarmingly high number for a starter. I could be wrong on that, but that's just something you don't really love to see. But overall, he was great. And, I think it was yesterday's game they were talking about that when they were talking to him. And they were saying that, it was almost a very major league approach. One of his pitches he wasn't really on with, and instead of just abandoning that pitch, he's like, okay, well, no, I'm going to pitch until I can find that pitch again. And that approach to it is how you see it in the big leagues. And that's what you want to see from a Friday night starter. You don't want to see a guy go out and abandon one of his pitches. It's going to come to him. These guys, they throw enough, they're good enough to have those pitches. He just had to get back on and find that pitch, and that's what he did. And you love to see that.
Yeah, and that he did the same thing last weekend in his start against Auburn. Was that was the thing they were talking about. One of his pitches he didn't have it at the start of the game, but he kept working and pushing it, and finally it came to him later in the game when he needed it. So, that's big. And I think the biggest thing too is finally to have a guy on Friday night that can go at more than 4 innings. Getting 6 out of Dietz is fantastic, and I think he's just going to continue to get better, because it's like we talked about. This is his first full season, really starting because of injuries and everything. So it's like he's going to not necessarily that he is the equivalent of a freshman, but it's almost like his freshman season.
His experience, the amount of experience he brings in is fairly equivalent to that of a freshman at this point in the season.
Right. So I think he's going to continue to get better. And, his first Friday night start went well. So, I expect him to be penciled in next Thursday as we take on Georgia back in Baum finally after a couple of road weekends. But then you turn over to the offensive side of things where, it seemed like Arkansas finally found some things with their bats this weekend. 9 hits in this first game that scored 7 runs.
6 of those in the 8th, though, like you were saying, like the offense took a little bit to wake up. But, hey, you know what? Better late than never.
Right, and that was all thanks to, big home runs from Cam Kojal and TJ Pompey. What is it with Pompey and, struggling and then coming up in big moments? Like he did the same thing where he was really struggling and then going into the Mississippi State series, had that big walk-off home run. And then he comes out this weekend after, 3 or 4 games of struggling, hit the ball, getting benched some, and then, just coming out and going, 1 for 4 with a big 2-run home run that helped Arkansas in this one. So, don't know what it is, but hopefully he can find some consistency with this now.
Yeah, and part of it that you do have to acknowledge, we did get lucky in the sense of some very timely errors by Alabama today and this game. You had, I think the eighth, there was back-to-back errors, and then we hit a double and then a home run, and we had 2 outs. So it was like they should have been out.
Right.
But then being able to capitalize on those second chances when given to them, that's big. But being able to take advantage of those extra chances when given them, because errors happen in baseball, it's not, no team is really privy to it. It's going to happen.
Right.
So being able to take advantage of and score, that's big.
Yeah. When you're looking at this order too, the one concern that you got going forward now, you saw him turn it on in the late end of last year, and you saw some rotation between yesterday's game and today's game a little bit, is Robinette at that first base spot. Friday night goes 0 for 4 on the day, and 2 of those were strikeouts. You hate to see that because he's a guy that's experienced, that you need him to be consistent, but and then we'll talk more about it when we get to yesterday's game. You saw the freshman Andrew Peck get the start. But, definitely multiple people in this lineup are starting to get things going. Heck, you even saw Kahil Aloy get a hit on Friday night, and we know how he struggled at the plate. You only had a couple guys that didn't get a hit, but, those guys that didn't get the hit were able to draw walks and just still contribute. So Arkansas comes out and gets the 7-5 win on Friday night. That you start the series off on a good note and just can hope carry that momentum into game 2 and 3. And sure enough, that's what they did. As we jump over to game 2, where Arkansas won this one 15-6. Again, late inning scoring in this one again that kind of propelled Arkansas to secure the series here. And in this one, you had Cole Gibbler get the start, his first collegiate start, 4 1/3 for him, 5 hits allowed, 3 runs, 2 of those earned, 4 walks, 2 strikeouts on 83 pitches. You hate to see 4 walks in this one, but at least for his first start, not the worst outing, but hopefully if he continues to get slotted in the Saturday or that kind of starting role, it just comes easy. I'm sure there were probably a little bit of nerves with him making his first career start.
And kind of going off of that, it was good to see, his first start didn't hit a batter, didn't have a wild pitch, so at least kept those nerves calm enough to not have those errors pop up. Yeah.
And then you had Eves come in relief for an inning and 2/3, allowed 1 hit, 1 run. 1 walk, 3 strikeouts on 28 pitches, but worked out a couple of different jams that was very impressive. And then you had Colin Fisher come in the final 3 innings, allowed 3 hits, 2 runs, 2 of those being earned, 2 walks, 1 strikeout on 43 pitches. So you saw him come in and work around a couple of jams too. That was the impressive thing with these 2 relievers is, they were putting some difficult situations with runners on, bases loaded type situations, and they were able to work around it and minimize or limit the damage. Both those guys, Fisher allowing 2 runs to score, but Eves not a lot. 1 run scored, but it wasn't an earned run. So, another outing where you have a starter that, maybe you would like to see Gilbert go to 5 or 6, but, for his first start, okay, I'll take it. And then let's see some improvement going forward if he still is slotted in a starting role, which I'm sure he will after this weekend. And then, your relievers coming in and doing their job where you only had to use 2 guys. We saw a couple of series where Arkansas struggled where, they would run out there 4, 5, 6 relievers after the starter. And, it didn't seem like anybody was able to, just come in and settle things down or, eat up some innings. And that's what Eves and Fisher were able to do in game 2.
Yeah, no, it was good to see. And it's also good to see that you can throw in a reliever with Fisher and go 3 full innings to close the game out. I think he's struggled a few games lately. So it might be similar to the Gackle treatment where bringing him out of the bullpen might take some of the pressure off of him. Yeah, he did allow the 2 earned runs, but I mean, those 2 runs came when we were already up 10-4.
Right.
And it was 10-5, and then it was 15-5, and he allowed 1 in the 9th. So you had a 6-run lead, then you had a 10-run lead. So I'm not saying, yeah, you allow a runner at that time, but it's like, okay, there wasn't as much, maybe not focus, but there wasn't as much urgency to throw 100% your pitch, maybe just try to get out of the game. Maybe it was, hey, try to get some contact and we can get out of this game a little sooner. Don't know, but I think it was good to let him play some without some of that added pressure coming into a 0-0 game and having to go from the get-go.
Right, exactly. And then offensively, another one where you got your bats going a little bit later in the game. As we saw, we didn't score a run till the 3rd. Then you score 3 in the 5th, 1 in the 7th, 5 in the 8th, 5 in the 9th. So another one where your bats got going late. In this one, you go down, Rutenbar leading off 2 for 5, scored 2 runs in RBI, had a double. You had Turner come in and pinch hit late in the game for him, 0 for 1 in that one. Ryder Helfrich 1 for 5 with 2 RBIs. Micah New 0 for 4, but does score a run and an RBI. Camden Kojal 1 for 5, run scored, a double for him. Ruiz, this one was one that surprised me, is that he was back this weekend, because I was expecting him to be out much longer. But boy, am I glad that he is back in this lineup with his bat and what he is able to do. That seemed like, one thing that will help our struggles from the plate is having a guy like Ruiz back. 1 for 2 in this game, 2 runs scored, an RBI, walked twice. And then Cahillo, 3 for 4 in this game too.
It's good to see him get some confidence and have a good day. Him and
this is what
someone else you're probably about to bring up.
Yeah, 3 for 4 for Aloy, 2 runs scored and 1 RBI. Also took a walk. Peck got the start in relief of Robinette, as we talked about his struggles in game 1. He goes 0 for 3 in this game, strikes out once. Then you pinch it Robinette later in the game. He goes 1 for 1 with 2 runs scored and a walk. Nolan Souza at second, 2 for 4 in this game, 2 runs scored, 3 RBIs, a double. He's continuing to get better and better as he's come back from the injury. And then TJ Pompey again, just lighting up the box score, 3 for 4, 3 runs scored, 4 RBIs, a double, and that home run. Like, he's just out there doing it all this weekend.
Yeah. So definitely good to see Cahillo kind of get some confidence with that at bat. Pompey's looking more comfortable, and that's also going to help a lot as well, because I know for a while there that left side of the infield was kind of the struggle spot. So if he can start getting his footing and play like this consistently, that'll just help so much come down the stretch.
Oh yeah, and I mean, again, it was like a surprise to me to see Ruiz in the lineup. Glad he's back. It didn't seem like that knee was bothering him too much this weekend. So hopefully that's a good sign that you built some momentum this weekend, but you also got one of your key outfielders back. And seems like he's doing pretty well. I'm sure he's probably going to be so sore and need some rest and recovery, but the fact that he was able to come back and perform kind of like where he left off was good to see. And then you go into today's game where Arkansas wins this one, much closer game, 3-2, where it was a back and forth kind of pitching duel between these two teams. The trend continued in this one, a couple of errors that allowed some runs in this game early on. And then we talked about the pitching staff kind of by a committee approach. You saw McGuire get the start in this one. As we mentioned, he started earlier in the week against UALR. And came out today. They announced the starter today. It was McGuire. He gets 3 innings for you, allows 3 hits, 2 runs, one of those being earned, 2 walks, 1 strikeout on 52 pitches. Then you have Parker Coyle come in again, his second appearance of the weekend, comes in for 2 innings, 2 hits allowed, no runs, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts on 34 pitches. You see Geckel for a second time in this series this weekend, 2 innings for him, 4 hits allowed, no runs, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts on 40 pitches, and McIlvain comes in for the save. The final 2 innings, no hits, no runs, 3 strikeouts for him on 24 pitches. So, a great job by the relievers today. Great job by McGuire. Getting through 3, only allowed a couple of runs, but, one of those being unearned due to some throwing errors. But all in all, great way to approach today with the pitching staff with, seeing what McGuire can give you, then, committee the rest of the way and seeing some guys step up. So.
Yeah, and it's good to see the same 3 relievers from Friday all come in and still do good as well. It was one of those, we talked about just a few minutes ago in the Friday game. Yeah, allowing the 5 earned runs, you don't love to see it, but when your bats are doing what they were, it's okay. And then you bring out the same 3 guys today, and they allow a combined 0 earned runs. So
right,
maybe even some more additional confidence right there for them, which is good to see.
Yeah. And then you jump over to the bats, again, getting started slower. Alabama's up 2-0 early in the game, scored a run in the second and a run in the third. Arkansas chips in runs in the 6th, 7th, and 8th in this one. But from the plate, tough day for Rutenbar, goes 0 for 5 on the day with 1 strikeout. Ryder Helfer 1 for 2, scored 2 runs, had a triple, and that was a barely a triple because he was turned on the Jets rounding third, and it was a close throw, but
the throw was off, thankfully. So
yeah, I think if it was an on target throw, then
they might have had him on that.
Yeah.
Based on the camera angle, it looked like it was going to be very close, but the throw being, a little
target.
bit to the left of
Yeah.
the play, I think helped him and saved that as a triple. But there's not many catchers that can get a triple
like
with that speed.
Oh yeah, and he also drew a walk today as well. So he's continuing the season he's having. Micah New 0 for 3 today with a RBI scored and a strikeout. Camden Kojal 1 for 4 RBI and a double. Ruiz 1 for 3, 1 run scored, a double for him as well. Kahia 0 for 3, but did take a walk late in the game that was kind of big for being able to push in one of those runs. Souza 1 for 4 with an RBI. Pompey 2 for 4 today. Robinette 0 for 2 got the start, and then pinch hit Peck later in the game, 0 for 1 for him. So that's going to be kind of what to watch for in the next week and next few games is what they do at the first base spot. Do you keep letting Robinette work through this, or do you give some more opportunity to the freshman and Peck? And so that's what I'm going to be watching. But overall, great job to not only win the series but sweep after the struggles that you had, getting swept by Florida, going on the road to Auburn, losing 2 of 3 there, and then coming back home, winning the midweek, getting some confidence back, just getting a win, frankly, and then being able to turn that into a series win on the road with the series sweep. And we talked about it earlier in the week. You can't count out Dave and his teams. Like he figures out the buttons to push that can get the things in the right mentality. And he talked about it. You had some of these veteran guys in the rotation that kind of they knew they were penciled in, and they kind of had a little bit of not a ton of urgency, if you will. Like they were like kind of just assuming, all right, I'm going to be penciled in the starter, and, no urgency for that pitching there the way we've been struggling. And so Dave shake things up, and we'll see what the pitching rotation looks like towards the end of the season. But I think right now, at least going into next week, you'll probably see very similar approach with Dietz being your Friday guy, Gibbler being your Saturday, and then a committee approach on Sunday. So,
yeah. And, going back to Eloy, 0 for 3, but that walk he drew was, because I know they were talking, that pitcher was probably about at the end. Made it into a 7-pitch at bat, and they ended up pulling the pitcher after that. And with Souza being up next, I mean, Souza reached on an error and then had struck out. So Souza got a new batter and then hit a single to score one. So
Right.
that was big. So that's big on one where it's like, okay, well, if he went down in 3 or 4 pitches, do they maybe give that guy one more batter to try to get out of the inning and whatnot? And, extending that out to make it a 7-pitch at bat, I think made him, end up pulling him and all that. So, it's little things like that might add up and just kind of make a difference there.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too, is it's like you see, I think a little bit more patience from Eloy at the plate. You still see him taking some hacks at it, but it seems like he's doing a little bit better in terms of waiting on pitches and not necessarily just swinging at everything, whether it's shoulders high or in the dirt. So
I don't know. Did you watch that at bat he had? Because
I did.
The foul ball he hit down the third base line, it sounded like it was gone.
Oh yeah.
And then it was like, oh well, it was foul, but he really got behind that one.
Yeah, so I mean, overall, just great weekend for this team. I think a lot of guys got some confidence back this weekend, both on the pitching staff and on in the box at the plate. So, it's going to be a big time series coming back home with Georgia coming down. The midweek game is going to be in Little Rock at Dickey Stevens, but you've got Georgia coming on, I guess, quote unquote, a short week because the series is going to be Thursday, Friday, Saturday instead of Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you'll come back home, have a quick midweek game down Little Rock, and come back and have a day off in between that and the Georgia series. So it's going to be interesting to see what that
Georgia looks like.
They lost Friday night and they won yesterday, so I don't know what their game today is.
They lost today to Florida.
So they lost the series to Florida.
13-7. So they lost the series to Florida. 13-7 was today's game.
Okay. So they'll be coming off of series loss. We're coming off of a series sweep, so it'll be interesting to see, how us and Georgia match up next weekend. With us kind of got some momentum, they're coming off of losing a series. So, it is back at Bomb. So hopefully, we can get back to our home crowd, come out and perform well, and have a good series. So,
yeah. So yeah, should be a fun series.
And as we stick with the Diamond Sports, we jump over. Arkansas softball was on the road this weekend as well, as they were taking on Mississippi State. They win the series, they lost Friday night in a 1-0 low-scoring pitchers duel type of game, where Robin Herring got the start for Arkansas. She allowed one unearned run on 5 hits and 3 walks, while she struck out 5 and 4 in the third. Of course, that one unearned run being the one that kind of wins it for them. They bounced back yesterday and had a 8-run 5th inning to give them the 8-0 run rule victory. And it was Arkansas's 21st run rule victory this season, which is the second most in program history, trailing only last year's team, which had 23. So,
okay.
In this game, Peyton Burnham, she got the start in this one for Arkansas. It was her 11th start of the season. She struck out 1, allowed just 1 hit and a walk on 67 pitches in 5 innings, and improved to 9-3 on the season. Dakota Kennedy, Brinley Bain, Tiana Bell also recorded a pair of singles in the top of the 5th as part of a 2-for-3 effort at the plate. Ella McDowell, Reagan Johnson registered RBI singles in the 5th, and Carly Davison drove in the first run of the game where she had a bases-loaded walk. And so big-time game there. It seems like the similar trends with the baseball team and softball in this game, late inning runs scored to win the game. So And then they came out with their rubber match today where Arkansas wins 10-3 to take the series. They had 13 hits, including back-to-back solo home runs in this game at one point by Kaylee Wyckoff and Kennedy Miller. And so now Arkansas is 35-6 on the season, 10-5 in SEC play, and it has won 4 of 5 SEC series this season. Dakota Kennedy on the day, 3 for 3 at the plate, 2 RBIs, 2 runs scored, a double, and 2 walks. Brinley Bain, 2 for 4 at the plate. Tiana Bell, 2 for 4, 2 RBIs scored. Carly Davidson, 2 for 4, and a run scored as well. Ella McDowell also went 1 for 2 with 3 walks. So Robin Herron started in this one, 12-3 on the season after allowing just 1 run on 3 hits and a walk while striking out 3 batters in 4 innings of work for her. And big deal for Robin Herron. She earned her 50th career victory, becoming just the 7th pitcher in program history to accomplish that feat at Arkansas, alongside Mary Half, who pitched from 18 to 22, Heather Schlittman from 2001 to 4, Tammy Kincaid from 97 to 2000, Autumn Storms from 17 to 21, Katie Henry from 05 to 08, and Rachel Talley from 99 and 2002. So big deal for Robin Herron to get career number 50 as the Arkansas softball team wins this game, heads back home with a series win, and sitting with a great record of 35-6 and 10-5 in conference play. You know, they will see this next weekend with a really big time matchup as they head to Norman to take on Oklahoma. So, you know, 2 of the top teams in the SEC and in the country right now. Arkansas going into this series was ranked number 6, and, you know, Oklahoma obviously being ranked in the top 10 as well. And we know the history of Oklahoma softball over the past few years. So, you know, this is going to be a big time premier matchup in SEC softball and nationally as well. So, big things there for the softball and baseball team, both having success weekends. As we jump over to some Arkansas basketball updates, there's not a ton to go on. You know, we talked about guys on Thursday that we'd like to have some potential, you know, news and, you know, potentials. But, you know, as we've talked about it, Cal and company like to keep everything locked down and quiet. There's not going to be a ton of information coming out until, you know, you've got things solidified and, you know, the paperwork signed type of situation. But, you know, it was reported that there was 1, potentially 2 visitors coming to campus today. One of those was expected to potentially be one of the front court pieces, not sure who exactly. And the other is, you know, potentially a guard to come in, as we know, when your DJ Wagner type replacement. But as soon as we get more details, we'll let you know. Another guy to keep your eye out for is a guy that reclassified potentially is Micah Murinen in this upcoming class. You know, he was a guy that's been talked about for Arkansas for a couple of seasons now. It's reported that he
I like him. I like the way he looked last night too in the Nike Hoop Summit. He did very well last night.
Yeah, it's being reported that
15 minutes, he was 5 of 9, 10 points, 8 boards.
Yeah, so, and he's what, around that 6'10", 6'11".
Yeah, I think so. 6'10", 6'11". Doesn't, when you look at him, he doesn't look as much of a physical presence. He looks kind of more like the long and lean type guys. But at least the way he played last night, he actually played with some physicality that was good to see. Definitely held his own and played, at least last night, a little bit more physical than what you would think looking at him and his build.
Right. And so it's being reported that apparently he's down to choosing between Arkansas and North Carolina. The link to North Carolina is that's where his mom went to school. So we'll see how much that weighs into his decision between, you know, you look at North Carolina, new coaching staff, they're going to not necessarily quote unquote rebuilding, whereas you've got Cal here that's got a solidified back-to-back, you know, Sweet 16s like Transplant Texan said expecting Cal to fight for him, invested too much to lose out. After, Chuck Martin also was headed to North Carolina, so probably was a part of that recruiting process. So, but we'll see how much that family ties have in that decision. But like you said, it would be great to have him come in and be a part of the front court for this Arkansas squad next year.
Yeah, and there's, hey, I can dream big, but another guy entered the portal about an hour ago. Milan I don't know how to say this last name, Momsilovich from Iowa State. He's going to test the draft as well as enter the portal. He was probably the best player on Iowa State this year. He was 17 points a game, shot 48.7 from three. He's 6'8", 225. Being that size and shooting from three that high, I'm surprised he's not a little bit higher on draft boards. I just pulled up one per tank one, and they have him slot at 53rd. So I don't know if it's because of his athleticism or what, but if he's going to be that mid to late second round, you'd expect him to probably come back. And obviously he would have a whole lot of people coming after him, as well as probably Iowa State trying to retain him. But hey, he'd be an interesting piece to try to maybe wait until the draft process has kind of run its course and you have these guys returning. That's what obviously we do with Knox also in retaining him. But, I think Nelly Davis was another one of those guys where he entered the draft process and then came back. So, get that experience, get those quality type guys later in the recruiting cycle once they kind of drop out of the draft. That would be some very quality, valuable guys who, maybe – I'm not saying you need to bank on it, but if you have some guys who slip up in the draft or in the combine and they end up coming back when everyone kind of assumed they were gone, hey, you might be able to get some of those guys and make a big difference there. That's one guy that obviously I think everyone in the country would like to have on their team. So I'm not going to get my hopes up for him, but that's one that's interesting. Came out an hour ago that he's entering the portal as well as testing the draft.
Yeah. Well, and then there's one name that you can cross off that list. Is just a few minutes ago on 3, John Rothstein, all those guys broke the news that Santos Cyril has committed to Miami. We kind of knew it was going to be between Arkansas and Miami. Apparently, they were the highest bidders, and as we've talked about, and Cal's mentioned, he's not going to play this bidding war game for some of these guys. So, that's a name you can kind of cross off the list. Transplant Texan asks, what are your thoughts on Cal persuading Sourier to reclassify to 26? Speaking of the Nike hoops, Tourier, we see you exactly. Tourier flashes.
I was about to say, I got
Theoro.
his stats pulled up. So, he's kind of the least talked about of our 3 incoming freshmen. But watching him last night, very much reminded me of a Theoro type ball. I feel like he's going to very heavily contribute, and by end of season, he may even make a push for a starting position. He was in 25 minutes last night. He was 8 of 13, 2 of 3 from 3, 19 points, 6 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, and 5 blocks. And defensively, when you have Billy, Jordan Smith, and him all on the court at the same time, guards are not going to be able to do anything. The defense will be very fun to watch next year based on what these guys are doing right now. So Torre is looking phenomenal, at least in that summit. But going back to the original question, if Osaroy if he reclassifies, I think I talked about it last show. If he reclassifies, I think he's most likely heading to West Virginia with a couple of his teammates and his former coach. If he doesn't reclassify and if he stays class of 2027, I think we have a better shot at getting him then. But I think that if you have him recommit, I think the chance of him going to West Virginia over us is actually higher. So I'm actually perfectly happy to not convince him to reclassify because One of his teammates will probably be a one and done at West Virginia, so he wouldn't be playing with him if he doesn't reclassify. So that's at least my thoughts on it, what I'm seeing.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see. Like we said, it's all quiet, not a ton of news to talk about other than guys' potential and some names that have been thrown out there. And then, it's just watching the portal, seeing where guys are headed and what guys are in it and guys that are entering, but also testing the draft. I mean, you kind of see that with Thomas and Billy as well. So, I think a lot of Arkansas fans are getting frustrated sitting here with like no news while you have other schools out there making moves and making signees. But, it's like we've said, years that Cal has, struggled, he comes in and, addresses the weakness the following season. So, I'm not too worried. I think Cal's working the phones and things behind the scenes and keeping it much quieter than when Muss was here. So
I would not expect us to go get like 4 bigs because we also addressed like Cal's very good at correcting issues. He's also very good at not overcorrecting issues, which you saw Musselman do.
right.
Musselman, okay, hey, we have no bigs. Well, the next season he went and got like 6 bigs out of the portal. Like Cal's not going to overcorrect. So what if I had to guess, you're going to bring Ewan back. You're going to go get a good, solid starting 5 big man. You're going to go get maybe a stretch 4 who's maybe a 6'9", 6'10", maybe not as much muscle, but more kind of like a Brazil type build, maybe a little bit more physical down low, but not much. And then you're probably going to go get a Abdullah Ahmed from BYU, their center, who, 2 points, 2.1 rebounds and like 1.4 blocks. Like not many stats, but has the physicality and the build to be a established big. You're going to be paying for him to pretty much be a off the bench backup post. I don't see him going out and paying to get 2 starting 5s.
Right.
I think you're going to have a guy who has the potential to be a good quality 5, but his stats from this past season are not going to be blowing out of the water. But I think looking at the potential and the development aspect of that, you're going to bring in a guy who a lot of fans will be like, I don't know why we went and got this guy. We're in trouble next year. It's going to be this season all over again. You're going to hear those complaints from one of these guys. But I think by the time the season comes, the guy that everyone was saying, hey, this is same as last year, I think he's actually going to be very, maybe not dependable, but he's going to be consistent down there and able to at least hold his own against these bigger front courts and just be kind of more of a bigger body in terms of just the roster build. So I think you're going to go get a starting caliber big. You're going to go get a bench guy who has the potential to be the starting caliber. Then you're going to go get you a stretch 4 who's got some length, 6'9", 6'10" in there, maybe from a school where he did have to play down low some and have some experience in that aspect.
Right. Yeah, I agree. So it's like Trent's playing sex and said, I think this is where fans are getting concerned. The big names are dropping off the board, but
yes,
I mean, Cal's not necessarily going to go overpay for one of these big names either.
Yeah, and also if you're looking at it, you don't have these. Technically, you could have these bombless budgets, but hey, when everyone's going and bidding, you're going to probably end up overpaying for someone. I don't know if y'all ever played a fantasy football draft where it's the fab free agent with the budget, but hey, by the end of the season, you're able to pay $2 or $3 for a guy because everyone else has already blown through their budget.
Right.
So, my opinion, let these big names jump off the board. Let people pay $4 to $6 million for them, and then get some of these guys who are dropping out of the combine that might shock some people, and you're able to pay maybe 2.5 to 3, get a little bit more realistic return on investment from those guys,
right,
and still be fine. But also by spreading that out, you're going to be able to get 3 to 5 guys who are solid. Maybe not one stud that you're overpaying for, but you're going to get some solid guys. And, maybe the locker room chemistry is a little bit better. I do think there is something to be said about overpaying someone and someone on the team being paid more in NIL than everyone else. I think maybe that was an issue a couple years ago with Devo potentially. I think that's one where you have to kind of avoid that potential issue in the locker room because that can actually harm the team in more than just in the locker room and also on the court.
Right.
So that's one where it is an aspect to building the team that you have to be mindful of.
100%. So, we'll see. It's going to be a slow, quiet process. I mean, you've got another 9 days of the transfer portal, so we'll see what
And that's
happens.
just for guys to enter. You still
Right,
have
just to enter.
the whole process after that, but they still have 9 days to enter, which is why you're still seeing guys like the Iowa
Slowly
State
trickle
boy
in,
enter his
yeah.
name in the portal. So
Yeah, 100%. So, any news we get, we'll let you know. But with that, we're going to jump over to some Arkansas football as spring practice is going on. As we know, they had a scrimmage on Saturday. We'll get to that in a minute. But the big news is today, Arkansas landed its third offensive line commitment for class of 2027. And it landed the commitment of Rogers, Arkansas 2027 lineman Henry Frazier. Is a 4-star guy, 6'4", 290, was offered by Arkansas in early March. And so, obviously that didn't take long, but, he chose Arkansas over Arkansas State, Louisiana, Toledo, Arkansas Tech, Dartmouth. He's recruited by the new offensive line coaches, Jeff Myers, Marcus Johnson. He joins a class that already has 2 featured offensive linemen additions in Bradley Sturdivant of Sheridan and Odafe Oroyu of Jenks, Oklahoma. And they also have a commitment from LaGrange, Georgia cornerback Zacharias Huzzy. So, Silverfield's doing well on locking up some top in-state recruits. We saw him come in and do that when he was hired, flipped several of the top 5 recruits to come in and, working on next year's class as well. So, great to see that there, especially putting emphasis on building up the offensive line depth and everything, because, that's going to be key, especially in the SEC.
yeah,
And
I mean, you gotta go get some. You gotta get some boys who know how to play. So it's definitely good to see that, and also keep your in-state talent.
Exactly. So, we jump over, the 25th of this month is going to be the spring game, but the team is practicing and scrimmaging up until then too. And so it wrapped up its second scrimmage of 2026 yesterday, where they had approximately 90 plays. And, they talked about, they interviewed, post that was, they talked to Ismail Cisse. He was talking about how, he kind of feeling like he left off where he got injured last year, where they're just getting more comfortable and learning the offense, knowing the schemes and what the defense is playing. He was talking about how last weekend, the defense had a good day. So he was like, they got us. We don't want to go out 2 weekends in a row, go 0-2 essentially. So they had a different mentality and just made sure they, were able to score in all means. And they did that today. So, Bradley Shaw, he mentioned how they always want to come out and get better, eager to have a team that always wants to get better, compete at the highest level. So, a guy from both sides of the ball, they're able to talk to. The scrimmage was closed to the media and the public, but based on big plays that came out of the scrimmage, players have been lining up with the first team, second teams. KJ Jackson got most of those first team reps. Not surprised there. AJ Hill worked with the second group. 5 of KJ's completions went for at least 10 yards, accounted for 104 yards, including a 19-yard touchdown pass to Chris Marshall, capping off a 75-yard touchdown drive. He's definitely going to be a big part of the program, is what Cisse said. I told him before the play, just to be ready, he's coming to you on the touchdown. So crazy it happened just a couple plays later. At the end of the practice, in a 2-minute simulation, A.J. Hill found wide receiver Courtney Crutchfield for a 19-yard touchdown. Hill completed 4 passes and went for 10 yards, totaling 98 yards on those connections, including the touchdown to Crutchfield, along with a 43-yard touchdown to Maddox Lassiter as well. So they talk about Cisse said how it's been interesting between KJ AJ because KJ's a lefty, AJ's a righty. So the ball's going to be coming out different. It's going to be spinning different from different, the two guys. But overall, great things coming out of spring practice. Sophomore defensive tackle Carlin Jones, who typically works with the second team, he subbed in with the first team at times as well and had the game's only sacks. Sacks are based on proximity, not live contact, as we know quarterbacks are off limits. So don't want to have any early injuries in spring ball. Tennessee kicker Max Gilbert missed the first.
Yeah, probably good to avoid those.
Yeah. Tennessee kicker Max Gilbert missed the first scrimmage with an illness, but he returned, went 3 for 3 on field goals. And, those were from 34, 42, and 53 yards out. So got an experienced kicker coming in. You like to see that. So, overall, great things coming out of spring practice. Rushing in this scrimmage, you had Cam Settles had a 12-yard run, a 2-yard touchdown run. Sutton Smith had a 12-yard run. Jasper Parker, the transfer from Michigan, had a 23-yard run. So things are going well. Offense is clicking. They're learning new playbooks, so they're just going to continue to get better. It's usually like one of those things. Defenses are usually ahead of the offense anyway. So as we
don't
keep going,
love that you only had one sack then, but
hey, it's a work in progress. So new guys getting the mesh together. Hopefully, we're hearing much better things once you get to fall camp. Guys,
yeah, for sure,
can learn the scheme, learn things like that during the spring. You have that bonding, that camaraderie that develops hopefully over the summer, and then you get back fall ready to go and kind of get things some solidified. So things going well. So I mean, I think at least up until now, you can say you feel like you're happy with how things have gone with Silverfield. To answer your question, Transplant Texan, he said, is it offensive ones versus defensive ones or ones versus twos? The majority of the scrimmage was spot the ball in plus territory at the 25 and play game like series, ones versus ones, twos versus twos, and 3 versus 3s. The only situational work came at the start when they focused on third down scenario. So it was ones, twos, 3s, 3s. So they didn't necessarily mix this round, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some of that as they continue to go through spring practice and also into the spring game coming up in a couple weeks. So
yeah, will definitely be good to see. So
with that, we'll get ready to wrap up here. So don't forget, we mentioned Wednesday being new show time for at least for a few weeks going forward, with Arkansas playing on some Thursdays. And so with that, just don't forget that as we get ready to wrap up.
Still be 7:30.
Yes, still same time, just different day. Midweek in Little Rock for Arkansas baseball this week as they're playing UAPB and Dickey Stevens. And so no midweek for Arkansas softball. They'll be back on the road next weekend at Oklahoma. Arkansas baseball will be home versus Florida. We'll keep you up to date on transfer portal.
Not Florida.
Yeah, Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah, Georgia will be coming to town, coming off the series loss versus Florida.
Got it. I was like, we already played Florida now. Hang on.
Yeah.
I don't want to rematch.
Let's not do that again. Yeah. So, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. That way you don't miss any time we go live. And as Transplant Texan said, make sure to like and share. And so as we get to wrap it up, you want to hit them with it, Zane?
Yeah, well, first off, hey, Transplant, thank you for always commenting and asking questions. We definitely appreciate that. So, and everyone else who comments and all that, we definitely appreciate it. Makes the show a little bit more fun for me. I get to start asking questions and get to go on my little rants. But yeah, Woo Pig always.
Yeah. So we'll be back for our midweek show this week, and we should have Hobbs back with us and talking about the series win over Alabama, how excited he is. The reason he wasn't with us today is because he actually last minute went down to the game today and watched it, so he'll be able to give us some more in-depth details on that. But with that, we're going to wrap up and get out of here. But have a great rest of your Sunday afternoon. For Zane and myself, we're going to get out of here, and we'll see you for our midweek show on Wednesday at 7:30 this week.